Welcome to the YouTube channel Horrifying Obsession, where mysteries, crimes, and chilling stories are brought to light. At around 2 a.m. on March 8, 2002, an emergency call shattered the usual tranquility of Viễn district, Ninh Bình province. For No Lum, a police captain with nearly 30 years of experience, late-night calls like this were not uncommon, but his intuition told him that this one was different. When he picked up the phone, the voice on the other end was that of a woman, trembling and panicked to the point where it was almost impossible to understand her. However, from the fragmented sentences, No Lum quickly grasped the situation. A man named Lê Bao had been murdered in his home, and his wife, Phan Thu Nguyen, was also severely injured and in critical condition. No Lum immediately assembled his investigation team, ensuring they brought all the necessary equipment to gather evidence at the scene. The team rushed down the narrow, muddy road leading to the village where the Lê Bao family lived. It was a moonless night, with thick clouds obscuring the sky, and only the faint beams of flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the rough path. When they arrived, the scene before them was nothing short of a nightmare. The three-room tile-roofed house stood isolated in the middle of a vast field, far from other homes in the village. The eerie silence only heightened the horror of the crime. In the main room, Lê Bao lay motionless on the bed, his body covered in severe wounds, with blood soaking everything around him. Phan Thu Nguyen, his young wife, was found unconscious behind the door, with clear signs of injury on her body. No Lum entered the small room where Lê Bao lay. The flashlight's beam swept across the walls, revealing dried blood splatters on the old wooden surfaces. The single bed where Lê Bao lay was the focal point of the crime scene, and No Lum immediately noticed the wounds on the victim's body. There were a total of 13 wounds, inflicted by a heavy blunt object, possibly an iron bar or a similar tool. This indicated that the attacker not only intended to kill Lê Bao, but harbored an intense hatred. Beside the bed, a cabinet had been forced open and the drawers ransacked. All valuable items inside were missing, raising the possibility that this was a murder-robbery. However, No Lum was not easily convinced by this theory. Something didn't add up. The forced entry and rummaging were too neat, with no signs of haste or panic. Everything seemed deliberately staged, as if someone was trying to construct a false narrative. Silently, No Lum noted down every detail, from the small blood droplets on the floor to the bruises on Phan Thu Nguyen's body. She was placed on a bamboo mat in the corner of the room, her face pale, her breathing weak but stable. A local doctor, summoned to the scene, examined her condition and confirmed that although she was seriously injured, her life was not in danger. On Phan Thu Nguyen's body, there were several bruises, particularly on her elbows and knees, indicating that she may have been attacked or struggled with someone. However, the strange thing was that these injuries were not severe enough to cause her to lose consciousness, which only heightened No Lum's suspicion about her future testimony. While waiting for Phan Thu Nguyen to regain consciousness for interrogation, No Lum and the investigation team began collecting statements from those around them. The first person they approached was Lê Bao's younger sister. The young woman was still in shock, her face pale and her eyes sunken. Lê recounted that around midnight, she heard her sister-in-law's cries for help from her brother's house. Worried for their safety, Lê ran over immediately. When she arrived, the door was wide open and the inside was pitch dark. Despite this, she bravely stepped inside, and as soon as she turned on the lights, the horrifying scene unfolded before her. Her brother lay motionless on the bed, and her sister-in-law was unconscious behind the door. The cries of her 6-month-old niece echoed from the corner of the bed, making the situation even more tragic. Hearing Léo's account, No Lum couldn't help but ponder what really happened. Why were the lights off? Who turned off the lights right after Lê ran over? And what led to such a gruesome murder in what seemed to be a peaceful family? After receiving medical care, Phan Thu Nguyen finally regained consciousness. She lay in the hospital bed, her eyes wide open, filled with fear. When asked about what had happened, she responded in a panic, her voice fragmented. "I don't remember. I only remember that Lê Bao came home late. He was very tired. I went to sleep before him. After that, I don't know anything else." Her words did little to assist the investigation, even making No Lum feel that something was amiss. Her testimony was too vague, lacking specific details, as if she was trying to hide something. During the investigation, No Lum also noticed that there were no signs of a violent struggle inside the house, apart from the injuries on Lê Bao and Phan Thuong Nguyen's bodies. This suggested that Lê Bao might have been attacked unexpectedly while sleeping and had no chance to fight back. But if that were the case, why was Phan Thuong Nguyen injured? Could there have been another conflict before Lê Bao was killed? No Lum began to suspect that this was not just a simple murder-robbery. There was something deeper, a mysterious relationship lurking behind this crime. He decided to monitor and interrogate Phan Thuong Nguyen more thoroughly once she had calmed down. Upon closer examination of the crime scene, the investigation team discovered several oddities. Notably, the bloodstains on the bed and floor. No Lum paid particular attention to the pattern of the blood, some of which were splattered, indicating that the victim's injuries were inflicted while they were sitting or standing. This matched the theory that Lê Bao might have been attacked unexpectedly while sitting on the bed. However, some bloodstains were drip-like, found on the floor next to the bed. This suggested that someone had sat or stood still for a moment before the blood dripped onto the floor, possibly Phan Thuong Nguyen after being attacked. These discoveries were not just isolated pieces, but important clues, revealing a broader picture of what had truly transpired in that house. No Lum knew that no detail, no matter how small, could be overlooked. He instructed the investigation team to carefully analyze all the bloodstains in the room to determine the exact timing of each wound and the actions of the victims. Another detail that caught No Lum's attention was the bruises on Phan Thuong Nguyen's body. They were not severe enough to cause her to lose consciousness, and their placement suggested that she might have defended herself or was possibly restrained during the crime. However, this conflicted with her unconscious state when she was found. Could she be hiding something? As the investigation team continued their work, No Lum took the time to review all the suspicious signs at the scene. He knew that analyzing these clues would guide the next steps of the investigation. No Lum and the investigation team spent the entire day meticulously analyzing the crime scene. They found a basin of dirty water placed in the corner of the room, inside which were a pair of gray-blue shorts and a leather belt belonging to Lê Bao. Both were stained with blood, but strangely, this blood did not match the pattern of blood from the fatal head wound on Lê Bao. Instead, the blood was dripping, as if it had seeped from another wound on the victim's body or from someone else. No Lum ordered these items to be sent for immediate testing. He knew that the shorts and belt could be the key to solving the case, as they might reveal what really happened that night. The dirty water basin was also carefully examined to determine if it had been used to hide the culprit's traces. The investigation team also noted the absence of signs of struggle inside the house. No furniture was overturned, and there were no indications of a fierce fight. This further supported the theory that Lê Bao was attacked while asleep or in a defenseless state. But what caused Phan Thuong Nguyen's injuries, and why did she faint? After completing the scene investigation, No Lum returned to the hospital to interrogate Phan Thuong Nguyen one more time. This time, she appeared calmer, but her eyes still reflected fear and anxiety. No Lum knew that to extract the truth from her, he needed to approach the situation delicately. No Lum began the conversation with gentle questions, creating a comfortable atmosphere for Phan Thuong Nguyen. He asked about her relationship with Lê Bao, about their marriage. Phan Thuong Nguyen recounted that, at first, their marriage was quite peaceful, but after she became pregnant, everything started to change. Lê Bao became distant, often coming home late and appearing stressed. No Lum sensed uncertainty in her words. He asked more about her relationships with others in her life, especially in recent times. Phan Thuong Nguyen hesitated, but eventually admitted that during her pregnancy, she had met and become close to a doctor named Do Huynh Oanh. What started as a typical doctor-patient relationship gradually turned into something more intimate. When No Lum asked more about Do Huynh Oanh, Phan Thuong Nguyen seemed evasive, unwilling to delve into details. This only increased No Lum's suspicion that Do Hyun-on might play a crucial role in this case. As the evidence samples were sent to the lab, Ngo Lam patiently awaited the results. He knew that these pieces of evidence could bring a breakthrough in the investigation. And as expected, the lab results opened up a new direction. On Lei Bao's shorts and belt, besides the victim's blood, scientists found traces of semen. This indicated that Lei Bao had engaged in sexual activity just before he was killed. This information shocked Ngo Lam, as it suggested that Lei Bao was not the only person in the room that night. Ngo Lam knew that this would completely change the course of the investigation. He called the entire team together and began analyzing every detail. If Lei Bao had engaged in sexual activity before his murder, then the woman involved could be Fan Thu-ngun. However, there was also the possibility that a third woman was present at the scene. Ngo Lam decided to interrogate Fan Thu-ngun again, but this time he would directly question her about her relationship with Do Hyun-on and what had happened that night. In the next interrogation, Ngo Lam sat across from Fan Thu-ngun in a small room. The atmosphere was heavy, tense enough to suffocate anyone. Ngo Lam began the conversation in a calm yet firm voice. "Miss Ngun, we found traces of semen on Lei Bao's shorts. This indicates that he had sexual relations before he was murdered. We need to know, do you remember anything more from that night? Did Trung Dun meet anyone else before coming home?" Fan Thu-ngun's face paled, her lips trembled slightly. She lowered her head, tears began to roll down her cheeks. Finally, after a moment of silence, she began to recount the story in broken sentences. I don't know where to start. A year ago, when I was getting a prenatal checkup at the health station, I met a doctor named Do Hyun-on. At first, it was just normal conversations, but gradually, we became closer, and then, we decided to become a couple. Ngo Lam was stunned, his eyes never leaving Fan Thu-ngun. He could sense the pain and regret in every word she uttered. Fan Thu-ngun continued, her voice choked with emotion. Each word weighed heavily on her chest. After more than 6 months of dating, we began planning to kill Lei Bao. Hyun-on said that if Bao died, we could be together without anyone standing in our way. Half a month ago, when I saw my husband and a friend named Ding struggling to raise a large sum of money to buy a tractor, I thought the time had finally come. Ngo Lam listened in silence. Every detail in Fan Thu-ngun's account matched the clues he and the investigation team had gathered. She continued. That night, when Bao came home, I made him have sex with me. When he was tired and fell asleep, I signaled for Hyun-on to come into the house to execute the plan. Hyun-on, carrying an iron bar hidden outside, quietly entered the bedroom. My heart nearly stopped when I saw Hyun-on approach the bed where Bao was lying. Without hesitation, Hyun-on raised the iron bar and struck his head. I couldn't take my eyes off the scene. Everything happened like in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Her voice became more fragmented as she continued. I stood there, watching the blood pour out of Bao's head and hearing the loud thud of the iron bar hitting his skull and feeling his body slowly become motionless. I had hoped that it would end immediately, but no. Hyun-on continued to strike several more times, as if to ensure that Bao would never wake up. Ngo Lam looked at Fan Thu-ngun, his eyes reflecting a mix of disgust and pity. He knew that this plan was not just the product of blind love, but also the manifestation of souls twisted by greed and cruelty. After killing Lei Bao, Fan Thu-ngun and Do Hyun-on did not stop there. To avoid suspicion and mislead the investigation, they decided to stage the scene as a robbery murder. Fan Thu-ngun recounted, after Bao died, Hyun-on broke into the cabinet and took all the 2,400 yuan that Bao and Ding had pooled. She intentionally made everything look like a theft. Then, she threw Bao's shorts and belt into the dirty water basin, intending to erase the traces. To create more traces for the scene, Hyun-on lightly struck my elbows and knees with the iron bar, then used a fruit knife to make shallow cuts on my head. I clearly remember the pain, but the fear of being caught and punished was much greater. I agreed to all of Hyun-on's actions, believing that our plan would be perfect. Ngo Lam continued to listen silently, now understanding more about the motive behind the crime. However, one thing still puzzled him. Why did Fan Thu-ngun faint after the incident? Was it a staged act, or had she genuinely been shocked by the crime she had been complicit in? After taking Phanthungun's statement, Ngolam quickly led the investigation team to the residence of Do Hyunong. With a search warrant in hand, they found in Hyunong's bedroom a blood-stained shirt, the same shirt she had worn during the crime. The lab confirmed that the blood on the shirt belonged to Lei Bao. Next, Ngolam asked Hyunong about the weapon and the money they had stolen. After some hesitation, Hyunong pointed to an abandoned well near her house and said she had thrown the iron bar down there. The investigation team quickly sent someone down the well and found the iron bar that Hyunong had used to kill Lei Bao. As for the money, Hyunong claimed she had burned it all because she couldn't find a safe place to hide it. At the location Hyunong indicated, the police also found some remnants of the money after it had been burned. With irrefutable evidence, Do Hyunong and Phanthungun were arrested and charged with premeditated murder. The case was no longer a mystery, but it left a profound haunting over greed and betrayal in love. 3 months after the case was solved, the courtroom of the Viễn District People's Court was packed with people attending the trial of Do Hyunong and Phanthungun. The atmosphere in the room was tense, with everyone eager to witness the final judgment of justice on the two individuals who had committed such a brutal crime. Standing before the dock, Do Hyunong was now just a shadow of the confident and determined woman she once was. Her face was gaunt, her eyes vacant, no longer the woman who had cold-bloodedly planned a murder. Beside her, Phanthungun kept her head down, tears streaming down her face. Inside her, regret and pain welled up, but she knew that nothing could change what had happened. The judge, with a stern and decisive voice, pronounced the sentence. Do Hyunong, you are charged with premeditated murder. The evidence is clear and irrefutable. Do you have anything to say before the court passes sentence? Hyunong shook her head, her voice trembling. I have nothing to say. I plead guilty and ask for leniency. The judge continued. Phanthungun, you are charged with being an accomplice in the murder of your husband. Do you have anything to say? Ngun raised her head, her tear-filled eyes, and choked voice. I deeply regret what I have done. I was led astray, blinded by foolish love. I know I can't make up for this mistake, but please give me a chance to atone, at least until my daughter is 2 years old. The judge was silent for a moment before reading the sentence. Do Hyunong, you are sentenced to death for murder. The sentence will be carried out immediately. Phanthungun, you are also sentenced to death for being an accomplice to murder. However, as you are caring for a young child, the sentence will be postponed until your daughter is 2 years old. The gavel struck down, signaling the end of the trial. The perpetrators had to pay the price for their crimes, but the cost to the victim's family was immeasurable. Immediately after the trial, Do Hyunong was led out of the courtroom, walking the final path of her life. She trembled continuously, her eyes vacant, knowing that death awaited her and there was no way out. Phanthungun was also taken back to the prison, where she would stay until her daughter turned 2. During that time, she would live in constant guilt, regretful for what she had done. She knew that her time with her daughter was short, and the fateful day would eventually come, bringing the punishment she could not escape. After the trial concluded, Ngolam stood outside the courtroom, watching as the vehicles carrying the convicts drove away. He felt an overwhelming heaviness that was difficult to describe, but also a slight relief, knowing that justice had been served. The family of Lei Bao, although the pain of loss could never be erased, might find some solace in knowing that those responsible for the crime had been brought to justice. However, the law's punishment could not erase the deep scars left by this case. The family of Lei Bao, from his elderly mother to his siblings, would have to live with the emptiness and haunting memories of their loved one's tragic death. As time passed, the stories of the case began to spread throughout Viễn District, leaving the community in shock and sorrow. People couldn't believe that such a horrific crime could happen in their peaceful village. Rumors and speculations about the true reasons behind the illicit relationship between Phanthungun and Do Hyunong became the subject of discussion in every corner of the village. But no one could fully explain why two ordinary people would make such a cruel decision. For Lum, this case was one of the most challenging and haunting in his career. Though he had witnessed many crimes, the complexity and intertwining of love, betrayal, and greed in this case left him deeply contemplative. Night after night, images of the crime scene, the tearful confessions of Phan Thu Ngun, and the vacant eyes of Do Hyun Oing haunted his mind. Lum understood that his job was not just about bringing criminals to justice, but also confronting the collapse of human values. Each case was a different story, and the case of Lei Bao, Phan Thu Ngun, and Do Hyun Oing was a costly lesson on the dark side of love and human blindness. It reminded him of the importance of preserving human values and that sometimes the greatest tragedies stem from the smallest things in life. Phan Thu Ngun spent the remaining days in prison, burdened with guilt. Every day, she thought about Lei Bao, their little daughter, and what she had done. She tried to atone for her sins by caring for her daughter within the limited capacity of a prisoner. However, she knew that nothing could make up for her actions. It was said that Phan Thu Ngun became quieter and more withdrawn after entering prison. She never spoke of the past, but sometimes she could be seen sitting silently, staring out the window where faint sunlight streamed in. In those moments, everyone knew that she was thinking about the past, about the mistakes she could never correct. The day her daughter turned 2 years old was also the day Phan Thu Ngun knew her life would end. She did not cry, nor did she show fear. She simply bid her daughter a gentle farewell, as if she had accepted her fate long ago. The little girl, too young to understand what was happening, only clung tightly to her mother, her innocent eyes not comprehending why her mother had to leave. That morning, Phan Thu Ngun was led outside, walking in silence. The sound of footsteps echoed through the long corridor of the prison, carrying the weight of regret and pain of a mother who knew this would be the last time she saw her child. Her final moments came in an eerie peace, as sunlight bathed her face. She closed her eyes, recalling the few happy moments in her life before darkness engulfed everything. The case in Viễn district was a dramatic and tragic story, a tragedy born of greed and misguided love. It reminds us of the horrific consequences that can arise when people are driven by greed and blinded by desire. But above all, it serves as a stark warning about the value of honesty, true love, and responsibility in every action we take. Thank you for following Horrifying Obsession and today's story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more chilling and thrilling stories. Remember, in life, sometimes the truth is scarier than anything we can imagine. See you in the next video.